There's an old proverb about a mighty oak and a little reed. I don't know where it comes from. Wikipedia says Aesop, but if you read a little further, it says a bunch of other shit, so who knows? Nothing in life is ever simple. It's always complicated if you look into it, but it's not important. Story goes like this. It's windy, and the oak is being a real dick to the reed because he's just bending all over the place, just bending all around in the wind because he's not big and strong like the oak. The oak's like, "Hey reed, what's your problem? Bend much?" And the reed's like, "Whatever, dude." Only it turns out it's not just windy, it's a fucking hurricane, and when the wind gets bad enough, the oak is knocked over while the reed is able to stay in place. Because rather than being rigid and inflexible, it stayed loose. Then the reed is like, "Haha, fuck you, oak, you loser." And that reed's name was Albert Einstein. Last week I fucked up. I uploaded a mean-spirited video with some pretty ableist language and overtones. Among other things, I referred to the conspiracy theories of a man who was diagnosed with bipolar disorders using the words nanners and lunacy. Lunacy, I came to learn, was actually directly related to bipolar disorder in a derogatory way, which I didn't know, but I knew better than to use that word, and I did it anyway. A few people took issue with it, and they let me know, gently, that what I had done was hurtful and beneath me. And I did what YouTubers are supposed to do in that situation. I followed protocol. I got really defensive, like a baby that had both pooped and peed itself, that kind of baby, insulted everyone who spoke up, and threw a temper tantrum. I was about halfway through writing an op-ed for Reason.com titled, "Why I'm Leaving the Left, the Hounding of SJW Woke Scolds," when I thought, you know what, I'm gonna ask my fiance what she thinks, and she'll tell me I'm right, because I'm always right, and the only feedback I should be allowed to get is constant praise. So she watched it and she said to me, "Well, Matt, you know, one problem with this video is that you did fuck up, and one thing about the criticism you're getting is that they kind of have a point." And suddenly, the cognitive dissonance was broken. And it became obvious to me, like it had been obvious to everyone else before me, that I was doing that thing. You know, that thing where you know you're wrong, so you try and just be wrong harder at the people trying to talk sense to you? To double down until you're comfortably beneath the Earth's crust and nobody can force you back up to the surface to confront the painful reality that you've hurt people. So I swallowed my pride and I said I was sorry. I took down the video, reached out to a few of the people I'd been particularly shitty to, and apologized to them personally. It hurt to do. It was hard. I don't tell you that to make you feel sorry for me. It should be hard. Growth is hard, and this is my job. People pay me thousands of dollars a month, and that means it doesn't always get to be easy. I'm not entitled to this being easy. I don't know exactly what creators owe an audience, but I know the answer isn't nothing. That's a shitty attitude to have, I think. I owe plenty to my audience. I owe you honesty. If I'm going to ask you to listen to what I say each week, the very least I can do to earn that privilege is to mean what I say. I owe you integrity. While nobody can be perfect, I owe it to people who have invested a little bit of their emotions in me over time to respect that and honor that. I'm not always a good person. Nobody's always a good person. But I think it's fair to say that I damn well ought to try. We all ought to try. And when I fail, and I sometimes will because I'm human, that means I have to make amends. I have to admit fault and face the consequences of my actions. And it's easy, really easy, too easy, to just not do that. Once I was done being awful last week, I felt awful. Appropriately, I might add. It should feel awful to be hurtful. That's healthy. That's good. As good as it might be for me, though, I don't like that feeling. And the temptation is always there in the back of my head. I don't have to apologize. I can just pretend this didn't happen. I can pretend I don't agree. I can act like I'm being picked on unfairly. And the thousands of people who follow me, in a social media sense, not in like a cult sense, would back me up. When people criticize me, I'm the powerful party in that exchange. It takes guts for people to criticize me. I'm extremely proud of developing a community of people willing to call me on my shit. That tells me, if nothing else, I'm doing a pretty good job of setting expectations. Want to know the weird part, though? People started immediately heaping me with embarrassing praise for doing what I considered to be the bare minimum. People started telling me, "Wow, what integrity you have, how brave of you," for doing what boiled down to me saying, "Oops, I gained Patreon donors from this," and it occurred to me, nothing bad is going to happen to me. I fucked up, I hurt people, I dehumanized people, and all I did was say I was sorry, and everyone was like, "Oh, we're good." It actually made people respect me more for apologizing, But that's not the narrative we're told, is it? It's supposed to go like, person does something not woke enough, and then the cannibalistic left descends upon them, and now nothing they can do will appease the bloodthirsty woke scolds. And here I was, on the other side. Now these people were descending on me. I'd been microaggressing all over town, and the SJWs were going to kick me out of their safe spaces for sure. Is this the end of Thought Slime? And no. Everybody was like, nah, it's cool. Don't do that again, though. Now, mind you, I'm white. I look male. I'm not disabled. There are certainly people whose disposability can be disguised as some boutique social justice cause. When a trans woman makes a little comic about shoplifting art supplies, everyone must take a moral stand against this type of lawlessness. And then they'll tune in later to watch Better Call Saul to watch the crime lawyer do crimes for money. People get harassed for transgressing, that's obvious. People get treated badly, sometimes far too badly, when they do something people don't like. Obviously. I am less disposable than many of my contemporaries. But this myth of the unpleasable wokelets, angry mobs who can't be pleased no matter how hard you try, they just want to play the oppression Olympics, and any apology will just be taken as an admission of guilt and considered dishonest anyway, so why bother? All of the complaints about the alleged frailty of the Tumblrite left, the cancel-thirsty brigades of radlibs, the wokelets lying in wait for you to mess up so they can destroy you. None of that. Anywhere to be found. By this point, I was feeling pretty shitty, so I curled up in bed with a book, played some Animal Crossing, made a stir-fry, and left social media for the day to pity myself. Good news, though, because the second I came back to social media, that guilt and self-pity disappeared, and in its place was rage. Oh, okay, that's not good. I have to go to my emergency bunker real quick. Just hold on. Hello and welcome to the Eyeball Zone. We cannot be escaped and your defenses are meaningless to we who see through eons. Left Click TV is a news and media analysis channel focused on Indian politics. And if you know anything about what's going on in India right now, that probably sounds real fucking heavy. That probably sounds like a real bummer. But I promise you, these videos are fun to watch, they're funny, they're breezy, they're easy to follow without knowing much about the political landscape of India, beyond it being currently ruled by a literal genocidal fascist modeled in the style of the actual real-life Nazis. Hey, did you know that Joe Biden's head of Muslim outreach has ties to Hindu nationalists? Hindu nationalists who are explicitly genocidal against Muslims? I didn't know that! That seems like a thing I, a person who spends an inordinate amount of time reading criticism of Joe Biden, should know. Check out the link to Left Click TV in the description below. This one comes with the heaviest possible recommendation. It is a Thought Slime certified Pro Click. Do you have a small project you'd like to see featured here in the Eyeball Zone? Send no more than one email to thoughtslimeeditor@gmail.com with the word eyeball somewhere in the description, and maybe you will find yourself trapped here in the Eyeball Zone. While I was away, a narrative had emerged. A narrative that I had been bullied into deleting my video by those pesky woke scolds. That this was another example of cancel culture run amok. Yet another innocent creator sacrificed at the altar of liberal identity politics. Some of them went so far as to celebrate. Finally, Thought Slime, the great big woke lord, was getting what was coming to him. What goes around comes around, buddy. I tried to explain the situation more clearly. That in fact, nobody had bullied me into taking down my video. That nobody, not one single person, had even asked me to take down the video. I took it down because upon further consideration, it wasn't something I was comfortable keeping up. It did not meet my personal standards. That ought to clear things up, right? But then the people making these claims huffed and puffed about how I was kicking the can down the road for other creators, how I set such a dangerous precedent. I gave in to the online bullies, made it less safe for everyone else, and how weak and pathetic it was that I couldn't stand up for myself. Let me tell you something. I don't give in to bullies. I have a lot of faults as a person. That isn't one of them. I was bullied for my entire childhood. I spent my teenage years dealing with my mother's abusive ex-boyfriend. I know what it feels like to be bullied. And it's not a feeling I will ever feel again. I've been doxxed, I've been threatened, I've had dozens of people with platforms bigger than mine sick their hostile communities on me. If I were afraid of being bullied, I wouldn't make YouTube videos and let thousands of people leave anonymous comments. I wouldn't leave my Twitter DMs open after people started sending me threats. I wouldn't cry on camera about cartoons from the 80s giving me complex gender feelings because I'd be too afraid of what the bullies thought. I shrug off bullies every fucking day. I am invincible to bullies. What I did was, I showed vulnerability. That doesn't make me weak. I'm strong enough to show off my vulnerabilities. I have nothing to fear by showing off my vulnerabilities because none of the people who'd be shitty enough to use those vulnerabilities to hurt me are able to hurt me. And I know that because they've all tried and failed. It was so goddamn patronizing, and the anger built over time. I had been used. I became a talking point to convince people of an attitude I find repellent. People made up a story about me that suited them, and none of them checked in with me to see if they had their facts right, to see if what they were saying was based in reality. Deliberately, I must imagine, because it wouldn't have been hard to ask. It wouldn't have been hard to check in and say, "Hey bud, what happened?" The only reason not to do that, but still talk about it, to still use my experience as a talking point, the only reason to get angry when I clarified that they were mistaken, it seems to me, is to be deceptive. Seems to me like you don't want me involved in the story you're trying to build because you know I'm not going to agree with you. To get mad when I tell you that you're actually wrong about the claims you're making seems to suggest that you want to build a narrative where there isn't one, at least not one that you wanted. So I was really angry. But at the same time, I felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. You know, I've been really struggling with motivation for a while. When I started making YouTube videos, I felt very energized by the online left. I felt like I finally got to speak to people who could explain a lot of the problems I had in my life. I felt, perhaps naively, that there was a strong sense of community and camaraderie. Nowadays, when I see someone online who shares my political beliefs, I'm hesitant to talk to them. Because what if they just hate my guts? What if they don't want to hear from me? What if they view me specifically as the problem with the world? What if I've done something or said something, or what if someone else has said I've done something or said something that means they don't want to hear from me? I feel a lot of the time like I'm walking on eggshells. And it's kind of ironic because the people who make me feel that way, constantly, are the ones who never shut up about the climate of fear and oppression that woke scolds like me breed. The ones who want to be able to say awful shit without fear of criticism. The edgy class reductionists. The wannabe dirtbag leftists. The ones who use slurs, ironically, because it'll help bring in people from the alt-right. Those people are the most sensitive, fragile, and belligerent critics on Earth. Anything which contravenes their worldview is subject to the most intense bile, worse than they can bother to muster for out-and-out neo-Nazis. I have felt so stifled by these people for a very long time now, and I didn't realize the toll it was taking on me, how alienating and isolating it was. I told myself it was because I was just afraid of conflict, and that's a convenient narrative for someone like me, because it lets me frame myself as the bad party. I'm just too much of a coward to speak up, I thought. I was afraid of reprisal. I was afraid of being ostracized. And that was part of it, for sure, but I realized there was a bit more to it than that. We on the left tend to place a premium on avoiding sectarianism or factionalism. It makes sense why. Traditionally, this type of behavior has led to a lot of problems for organizers. It kept us from uniting on one unified front to achieve our shared ambitions. But that unwillingness to be sectarian can be exploited as well. You know as well as I do that radical spaces attract tankies, or nosbols, or eco-fash, and all sorts of other bad actors that try to weasel their way into our spaces. Those are very overt examples of how our uneasiness with sectarianism can be exploited. Those guys are obviously, unambiguously harmful, and their inclusion in our movement is obviously incongruous with our values. Most reasonable people can agree with that. But it by no means has to be that extreme. You can use it to dodge responsibility for or criticism of your personal actions by positioning them as an attack on a faction or tendency, real or imagined. Likewise, you can attribute criticism to some other group, acting needlessly sectarian. That shifts the discussion from talking about the thing you're being criticized for to talking about an us versus them team sport. Oh no, the people who are criticizing me just hate anarchists. They just hate BreadTube. They just hate dirtbags. Look, pal, if you're offended by me making a racist joke on stream, which I should point out, I only did ironically, so there's not even a good reason to be mad, then you need to move past this woke scold versus dirtbag mentality. We can't fight each other. That's just what capital wants. Hey, when I said we need to cleanse the streets of degenerates, I thought that was an okay thing to say. If you expect me to apologize for doing something I didn't even know was wrong at the time, that's gatekeeping. And on some level, I think this rhetoric got to me. They bamboozled me. I certainly didn't want to be a gatekeeper. I didn't want to be sectarian. I didn't want to make people feel like they had to be perfect and know everything before they were allowed to just, like, be around. So a lot of times I stayed quiet when I shouldn't have. I stepped back when I saw people say or do things that I knew were wrong because I was afraid that if I spoke up, if I criticized them, I'd be contributing to a culture on the left of paranoia and uncharitability. Also, I kind of didn't want to let these people become the story. I didn't want to throw fuel on the fire of this narrative by inviting them to rebut me. I didn't want my life to become an endless cycle of back and forth drama, where bad actors can use my criticism of them to present themselves as unfairly persecuted for not falling in lockstep with my values. So I bit my tongue. Again and again and again. When these people trolled me, I ignored it. When they insulted me, I ignored it. When they went on unhinged rants where they claimed that I, personally, was what was wrong with the modern left, I ignored it. When they claimed I was lying about being non-binary to gain some sort of cachet or clout, I ignored it. When they, jokingly, said that their lives would be a lot easier if there was a final solution for people like me, I ignored it. When other people came to me asking how I felt about these people insulting me, I'd tell them, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to give them my attention. And that's why it made me so angry when I was used as a prop in this story. Because I thought I had been biting my tongue for the sake of unity, to avoid creating drama, and here they were using me to do it anyway. To drag me kicking and screaming into a discussion that I had avoided out of a misguided sense of solidarity. And I just thought, fuck this. I don't need this. This isn't serving me. I was making myself miserable trying to accommodate a contingent of people whose only goal in this world seems to be to say shitty stuff so that people will complain about that shitty stuff so they can complain about other people complaining about them. And somehow they had me convinced that if I spoke up, if I said, hey, I don't think you should say shitty stuff, I think it is in fact bad to say shitty stuff, I would be the one being divisive. All of these angry babies who call me a liberal whenever I say that we should try to use inclusive language. All of the irritating 4chan dropouts who ooze their way into my mentions if I use the term white privilege in a video to say, LOL, imagine telling a homeless white guy that he is more privileged than Beyonce. This is what happens when you don't incorporate class into your analysis. All of the creeps who yell at me for being overweight because it means I won't be able to win fistfights in the revolution that they imagine. I don't need these people. I have nothing to prove to them. And they're never going to be happy with me because I'm never going to acquiesce to their demand that everyone treat them like unfairly maligned truth speakers being punished for having an open mind. And it's like being let out of a cage. I hadn't realized that I'd been gaslit into policing my behavior like this, under the auspices of preventing people from having to police their behavior. From now on, I'm done trying to please these sensitive babies who think everyone that criticizes them is a sensitive baby. I'm done being firm but polite about far-right entryism into our spaces. I'm done giving a shit about the people who think I'm not radical enough for not performing like their version of a radical. The people who think liberalism is anything in politics that they personally find embarrassing. Because that's all politics is to these chuds. An exercise in feeling cooler than their opponent. Let them. Go off. Have fun, kids. If you think I apologized too easily for my shitty behavior, you're wrong. I didn't apologize quickly enough or often enough. But I've been apologizing too easily for the shitty behavior of others, and for that, I am truly sorry. Hey, thanks for watching my video. Go ahead and hit the dislike button if it gives you a sense of power, if it makes you feel like you're owning me. You can leave a comment calling me whatever slur you want. Nobody's going to see it, because I will delete it, but it might bother me for half a second, so that could be a thing you do. If you liked the video, then there's a like button as well. You can press that. There's the Patreon thing. You know all about it. You can catch me every 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at twitch.tv/thoughtslime. You can also catch my videos about horror movies at youtube.com/scaredycatstv. I'm going to do my best not to check social media for the rest of the day,